She's just unhappy. She would rather, obviously, us be there, and we're not there for her, so it's sad.
A family says they're struggling to move their mother across country into a BC care home, pointing to gaps in seniors' care in this province. Plus,
they're sentient beings. They need the care, and we need to care for them.
how a home in northern BC wound up with more than 200 stray cats, and why the BC SPCA is now stepping in to help. And
it's about sharing good things too, sharing traditional teaching, sharing cultural practices.
what's behind a drop in toxic drug deaths in the Powell River Health Authority.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. A Kelowna family is struggling to transfer a loved one into subsidized assisted care from out of province. Advocates say their circumstances point to gaps in the province's seniors care system. As John Hernandez reports, the number of beds available has dropped over the past year.
She's there all by herself. There's nobody there with her to, if something happens and she goes into the hospital, she's all alone.
Nikki Drinkwalter and Darla Brown fear for their mom, Elaine Guyan's physical and mental health. The senior lives away from family in a small community on Prince Edward Island. Her daughters say the phone calls have gotten harder.
A lot of the conversations are very quiet. She's depressed and she doesn't have a lot to talk about, and doesn't really want to be where she's at because she's just unhappy.
Guyan, who is blind and partially paralyzed, lives in this subsidized care home in the community of Crapo and no longer has any family here. Both her husband and son recently died. Her daughters, who live in Kelowna, have been trying to transfer her to a facility in BC ever since.
We just thought when Dad passed away, we'll put her on the wait list for when a bed opens up here, whether that be 6 months, a year, whatever it takes. When the bed opens up here, just transfer her here.
The only problem, Guyan doesn't qualify for subsidized assisted care in BC because she hasn't lived there for at least 90 days.
Because the healthcare system is a provincial system, it doesn't matter if she is a Canadian citizen, it matters what province she's lived in.
Residency requirements for subsidized care in BC can be waived. Among the criteria are if the individual has no close family supports in their province of origin. Despite seeming to qualify, Elaine's case was denied.
So we talk to one agency and they'll direct us to another agency and another agency, and they'll give us another number to call, and at the end of the day, we're sorry you're going through this, but there's nothing that can be done.
CBC News has yet to receive a response from BC's Health Ministry. The province's seniors advocate admits these situations can be challenging, but says the rules are there for a reason.
So what you don't also want to do is set up a situation where I can't get into my long-term care home in another province, or it's more expensive in another province, and so I come to British Columbia. And what about the British Columbians who have been waiting on that wait list?
Well, it's all about capacity.
This former health minister says BC is forced to ration out its care beds because of a lack of supply. In 2023, the wait list for assisted care jumped by 34% to more than 1,000 people. At the same time, the total number of subsidized units dropped by about 2%.
People that, have lived in British Columbia all their lives face the same problem when they need assisted living.
For these sisters, private care might be the only option, but not an affordable one.
Minimum is going to be like $36,000 a year. we can't afford that.
A dilemma more and more families are confronted with as their loved ones get older. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC United MLA is accusing the province of not doing enough when it comes to public safety, after we learned the man charged in a Vancouver stabbing this week was released from jail on other offences less than a week ago.
In terms of prosecutions and our correction system, we need to ensure that we are recognizing those individuals who are going through our system who are part of this revolving door potentially in order to keep people safe.
46-year-old Kent Douglas Meads had been serving time for uttering threats against his family and federal politicians. The province says it's taking action to keep repeat offenders off the street by helping police, prosecutors, and probation officers work together and expanding mental health crisis response teams into more communities. Food industry workers are calling for better protections when working indoors. They rallied outside Health Minister Adrian Dix's Vancouver office today, calling on the province to implement maximum temperature limits in workplaces. The rally was organized by the Workers' Solidarity Network, a coalition of non-unionized and precarious workers in the province.
So despite the 2021 heat dome that took the lives of 619 individuals and the fact that WorkSafe BC received a 180% increase in worker complaints, a third of those being restaurant related, the current thermal exposure measures have not been updated since 2005.
The group also wants workers to have more frequent water breaks and rest during heat waves and changes to dress codes to better deal with the heat. The Metro Vancouver Regional District has now approved moving forward with a pilot program that will allow alcohol consumption in 6 regional parks. The parks are Boundary Bay Regional Park, Brunette Fraser Regional Greenway, Campbell Valley, Capilano River, Derby Reach, and Iona Beach Regional Park. If a new liquor bylaw is passed, the pilot program will run from the end of this June to mid-October, with alcohol drinking allowed anytime during park hours. Meanwhile, Metro Vancouver is also updating the price tag on a wastewater treatment plant on the North Shore. What was first estimated to cost about $500 million, then $1 billion, is now coming in at just under $4 billion. The North Shore wastewater plant was meant to be built by Acciona and completed in 2020. Metro Vancouver terminated its North Shore contract with the firm because of delays and cost overruns. The Spanish-based firm is suing Metro Vancouver for unnecessary termination of the contract. When they were released from the project, the site was 36% complete. The facility is now set to be complete and operational by 2030. Metro Vancouver says they are acutely aware of the concerns around any potential impact on taxes for residents on the North Shore. The BC SPCA says it is planning to take more than 200 cats and kittens into its care, and they're all from the same Houston, BC home. It's an enormous amount of cats for one household to have, so our Liam Britton is here to explain how this happened. Liam, exactly what happened here?
Quite a few cats, and according to the man who had these cats, and 298 by his count, it started off as his attempt to do a good deed for animals, but it spiraled out of control when the cats kept multiplying. Bruce Robinson told CBC that in 2020, around the start of the pandemic, he had 2 pregnant cats dropped off on his home driveway in rural Houston. That's a small town between Prince George and Prince Rupert. He also started seeing people giving away cats in town and felt like he had to take them in. And neighbors started dropping off animals on his property.
It was okay for a while, but then when there was no money and, I started, the first shocker was when I had 12 cats had kittens all in the same day, and then 5 more the following day. And I don't know if you understand, but it's a circus that nobody's ever really can control when you got that many.
So he claims he was spending around $3,000 every month on the cats. 28 kilograms of food a day, 10 litter boxes to clean. He says he even lost 40 pounds just taking care of them all. He lost his job at a Canfor mill a while back and says he had no income. He said he had a nervous breakdown, and that's when he knew he was in trouble. So he called the SPCA to get the cats into their care.
And Liam, what is the SPCA saying about this?
Well, like I think a lot of people would be, they're expressing astonishment at the situation. It's a case, they say, where a person with a big heart got overwhelmed. And the cats were well cared for. They had good weight and they're sociable. But the SPCA says they haven't taken in this many cats at once since the 90s. And it will be an expensive undertaking.
You know, one cat in our care can cost the organization anywhere between $450, $700. That's in our care. Multiply that, you can just $90,000. I have no idea. I have no idea.
So the plan is to get the animals into a large building, which they don't yet have and are seeking, to assess them all, vaccinate them, spay and neuter them, and then send them around the province to be adopted. Now, Robinson is not facing any penalties for this. He says his situation is a cautionary tale about getting in over your head, and he feels ashamed for how this all spun out of control. You know, Janelle, I'm sure there are plenty of us who want to have hundreds of cats at one time, but maybe this spells out why it's not such a good idea.
Thank you so much. The CBC's Liam Britton reporting. Vancouver will host 7 FIFA Men's World Cup games in 2026, but we still don't know how much it will cost. In Toronto, the estimated cost went from $45 million in 2018 to at least $380 million, and it may balloon even further. While we wait on the province and the city to tell us more, we wanted to know your thoughts. So the CBC's Karis Hogg took to the streets to find out.
I guess we host all kinds of other things. We hosted Expo, we hosted the Olympics, and it seems to have paid off in the long run.
I don't know how much these tickets are going to cost, but I don't feel like people have the luxury nowadays to go and watch stuff like they would used to.
But that does sound like a lot of money for soccer. I'm just not one of those soccer fans.
I would be concerned about the cost, whether they're transparent about it.
I mean, everything costs money. I mean, the price of gas goes up, we still have to buy gas. I mean, if they're going to make us pay taxes for the World Cup to come, I'd rather pay the World Cup than to pay gas.
Considering that I'm a taxpayer and I own a business, it's quite expensive, right? I think you see every year it's bad, right?
The Powell River Local Health Authority has seen a drop in toxic drug deaths this year, cutting the number of deaths in half compared to last year. Part of that is attributed to the Harm Reduction Centre located on the Clahaman territory. Claire Palmer was in the Cathet region last week to learn more about the life-saving work they do.
On Clahaman territory just outside of Powell River, it's in this old soccer clubhouse that community members are hard at work.
It helps provide just a safe space for people to come and just be around other people and sometimes enjoy a nice meal.
It's not talking about the issue of substance use or abuse or non-abuse or alcohol. Yeah. It's about sharing good things too, sharing traditional teaching, sharing cultural practices.
The program started with pop-up harm reduction tents in September 2020 when people were staying home due to COVID-19. The Made In and Made For Clahaman program offers cultural programming, food, safe use supplies, drug checking services, healthcare referrals, and more. Kevin Blaney, who carved this paddle before he died, had a vision for this program. He was an advocate for improved harm reduction services for the nation, believing other options had failed.
He had many big ideas and was really putting his boots to the ground and had some very big hopes and dreams for harm reduction in Clahaman.
The program has grown over the previous 4 years. They have become the first Indigenous community in Canada to use this, a spectrometer. The device works by shining infrared light at a drug sample to test its components. A trained technician can identify any toxic substances and decide if it's safe to consume or not. Courtney Harrop calls it a game changer and says testing has saved lives.
It's been pretty big, and Clahaman, we've been very blessed over the last, I would say, probably 3 years in decreasing fatalities from substance use.
While the Island Health Authority does not have specific details on the Clahaman community, according to BC Coroner, deaths in the region have decreased. In 2023, 6 people died in the Powell River area from unregulated drug use, down almost half from the year before. Harrop makes a connection to the work the nation is doing.
That was a big game changer and really speaks to the value of having drug checking services in community, especially in rural and remote communities.
While they are seeing results, this dedicated group will continue their hard work well into the future. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Cla'amin.
A Kelowna man had to abandon his attempt to swim a notoriously dangerous channel between two Hawaiian islands after losing a battle with jellyfish. Here are Nick Pelletier's battle scars from venomous jellyfish. The 26-year-old embarked on a 42-kilometer endurance swim through shark-infested waters. Jellyfish stings forced him to stop his swim with just about 12 kilometers left.
Felt like getting hit by like you're getting branded almost. It's just like a shooting, fiery pain. Kind of takes your breath away. That wasn't the thing that stopped the swim. It ended up being, I just took on so much water. I was puking so much and getting water in my lungs.
Pelletier earned fame last summer for swimming the entire length of Okanagan Lake without help. Despite what happened, he says he's ready to swim the channel again. To another grueling race, a Chilliwack man has become the first Canadian to finish one of the world's toughest marathons. This is Ukrainian-Canadian Ihor Veris, who finished first in the Barkley Marathons in Tennessee. The race is made up of 5 20-mile loops with thousands of meters of elevation. Runners have to collect pages from hidden books along the course. There is water available, but no aid stations.
Well, it is quite phenomenal. When you think 17 people up until this year have finished that race in its 30-year history. It is a grueling race. You're talking 60 hours, that's your cutoff, 60 hours of running potentially, in his case, just over 58 hours.
Another big achievement, Jasmine Paris has become the first woman to ever finish the race. Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at our weather. But before we get into that, Darius, are you a runner? Can you imagine running for almost 60 hours straight?
No, I'm more in line with the swimmer. The jellyfish stings looked awful, but that seemed a lot more refreshing than running. I mean, I thought a marathon was bad. That's just insane. I
love how driven
kudos.
all these people are, though.
Yes. It's very impressive. If anybody else wants to get out and avoid getting wet on a run or go for a swim, maybe, if you're especially brave, this weekend, Sunday is going to be the day to do it across BC. Pretty much no precipitation anywhere. We're going to see beautiful sunny skies. In the last 12 hours, we have seen some scattered showers pop up. They have been heavy on some places on the island, and you can see there were a few flurries in those very high alpine peaks, but for the most part, it was falling as rain, and we saw really just light showers here on the lower mainland. Now, over the next couple days, we're going to see the continued showers into tomorrow, particularly for the lower mainland, but the South Island as well. By tomorrow night, we clear up, and then into Sunday, just a really dry day, nothing really happening. Monday is when we see that next wave come, probably affecting lightly the north and central coasts as well, but for the most part, hitting the south coast once again. So if we take a look at the local mountains, though, we can see pretty much just rain here, not really getting those high elevations to see some flurries. Maybe for Whistler, we would see some of those flurries, but here on the here in Vancouver, not going to see those, I'm afraid. Really just some rain, maybe a tiny bit of snow. And then for tonight into tomorrow, pretty consistent. Some light showers coming in and out. Nothing really to note.
Thank you so much, Darius.
Thank you.
A new exhibit in Burnaby is exploring caste discrimination. Overcast highlights the struggles of Dalit Canadians. As Benit Breach reports, curators hope it sparks deeper dialogue.
Stepping inside this exhibit, stories and struggles of caste discrimination in BC cover the walls.
It's been normalized in our community, and it's something that keeps getting silenced.
Silence. Co-curator Anita Lal wants to keep challenging.
Comments that are made that, even though within the Punjabi community, which is predominantly Sikh, we don't practice caste, but yet in our everyday life, there is this, we make fun of people like you. So caste is a centuries-old system of oppression. It started off in Hinduism, but it actually is found throughout all South Asia, and it's based on purity and hierarchy.
At the top are Brahmins, or priests. At the bottom are Dalits who were forced into undesirable jobs like leather workers, sewage cleaners, and street sweepers. Even though the caste system was banned in India around 1948, Lal, a Dalit herself, says caste discrimination still shows up in many ways today in Canada. From relationships.
If you are not of a prominent or caste privileged background, most likely you will not be encouraged to continue this relationship.
To music.
The majority of the time in Punjabi music, you see caste come up.
And schools to workplaces across BC and Canada.
And that is a real pain that is not something that is from another place, but it is here and manifesting in Canada. It's not something we just have to leave in the past, but we have to work to dismantle it. There's a lot of ways of thinking that exist. There's jokes that are told.
Recently, there have been growing calls to recognize caste oppression in BC, especially since Toronto's District School Board and Seattle City Council made landmark decisions to address caste discrimination last year.
And we need to start creating laws, or we need to start creating safeguards for people who are facing discrimination.
Now, these stories come from young Dalits today.
So when these youth came and said, you know what? We're not gonna shy away from this topic. We're gonna actually not whisper our caste anymore.
Here, there's also struggles rooted in the past. Lal reflects on her great-grandfather.
And he's been documented as the first Dalit to come to North America, November of 1906. And one of the reasons, he came to this country was to escape casteism, right? And I always find it interesting that almost 120 years later, we're still having the same conversation.
Whether it's discrimination from decades ago to now, Lal hopes this traveling exhibit will spark more change and reflections across Canada. The exhibit will be at the Burnaby Village Museum until March 28th. Benit Brach, CBC News, Burnaby.
It's the second week of Ramadan. After the break, we'll hear from a dietitian on the best ways to stay healthy during the month of fasting. Thank you for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. When we think of illegal firearms, we think of guns stolen or smuggled. But there's another source, so-called ghost guns, built with 3D printing technology that are untraceable. The CBC's Ellen Morrow looks at how they're made and how police in Canada are trying to combat them.
We're at an Edmonton police facility.
Yeah, this is where we're going to be doing the shooting. We test all our firearms in here.
Testing out an untraceable firearm, a ghost gun.
Now we'll load a full magazine.
Firearms expert Larry Snidel just finished making this gun using a 3D printer.
And are we all good?
We're good. What's worrying police? A growing number of criminals across Canada are doing the exact same thing. 3D printed ghost guns are homemade with no serial numbers for tracking anywhere on them. Police are finding more of these weapons across Canada, including a first-of-its-kind nationwide sting last year. 71 completed 3D printed guns and 176 3D printed gun frames were seized.
They are a massive, massive concern.
This is the Firearms Examination Unit of the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Teams.
We printed this to demonstrate how the supports work to help the investigators.
Here, Larry tries to recreate 3D printed guns found at crime scenes, helping to build court cases and educate officers. The receiver, or the frame of the gun, the part where the serial number would normally be, can be made in under 10 hours.
I'm looking at what was happening a couple of years ago, what's happening now. People are experimenting on different things.
The Liberal gun control law, C-21, targets 3D printed guns in two ways. Making it a crime to have computer data that pertain to a firearm capable of being used with a 3D printer for the purpose of manufacturing or trafficking a gun. And requiring a gun license to buy some of the metal parts, including the barrel and slide.
But that section of the law dealing with those metal parts has not come into force yet.
This is what a receiver looks like as it's being printed. At the end, metal parts need to be added.
We're going to take the supports off to give us access to all the parts here.
It takes Larry about half an hour to complete.
Everybody's got eyes and ears protection on. And we got a crack in the receiver after 10.
The plastic there cracked.
Yeah.
A 3D printed gun is not always reliable. But experts say that's not what matters.
One round is bad enough, and we got 10 out of there.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Edmonton. Well, it's almost the end of the second week of Ramadan, and Muslims who fast have been eating a meal before sunrise to keep them full during the day and then breaking their fast at sundown. It's a time when intentional nutrition is important because there are less hours for people to eat the food they need. Nilafar Dalami is a registered dietitian, and she joins me now. Nilafar, thank you so much for being here. I want to talk a little bit about, what you advise your Muslim clients to eat during a time like this when we're talking nutrition.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently in Vancouver, the fast is 14 hours between dawn and sunrise. So we have a limited time to get the nutrition and hydration that we need. So what I advise is to kind of be more intentional with your choices, with the meal that you have at sunset, the iftar. You want to make sure that you have whole grains, things like oats, quinoa, brown rice, those kind of grains that give you energy and help you sustain energy, as well as protein, healthy fats like avocado or olive oil. Some examples of protein are like fish, chicken, beans, lentils, chickpeas. And then, of course, to have water at iftar and also throughout the day as well. So, and then you have that one meal called suhoor, or your sunrise meal as well. So at that one, again, you want to be having those similar types of foods that help you sustain energy and also make sure that you're hydrated as well, because again, the fast is so long.
Absolutely. And now not everyone has to fast, like pregnant women and elderly, those with illnesses that need that nutrition throughout the day. From a nutritional perspective, when would you consider someone should not fast?
So if we're considering women who are either pregnant or breastfeeding, older adults who are frail and at risk of falls, individuals living with diabetes, especially if they're taking insulin or blood sugar lowering medications, as well as if somebody has a history of eating disorders, we do recommend speaking to your doctor if you are considering fasting.
As someone who knows a lot about food and proper dieting, how does Ramadan change the way you think about food?
Yeah, so it's really a time where you can think more deeply about the nutrition choices that you make, because you have those limited hours and that's where you want to get the most nutrition. Just being mindful, making better food choices, and also thinking beyond yourself. So, our food choices have impact on our planetary health. We have a huge problem with food waste, right? So thinking, Ramadan is a time to think about those things as well.
Yeah, really great reminders. Nilafar Dalami is a registered dietitian. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
After weeks of questions about the health of Catherine, Princess of Wales, she has now revealed to the public she has cancer. We'll learn more about her diagnosis and public statement after the break.
Christine Filipowicz says the key to learning line dancing is knowing some basic moves and adding steps along the way. A dance instructor for 15 years, Filipowicz started teaching line dancing in Cape Breton after moving to the island a couple of years ago.
People just really love to participate in something that is fun and is to dance, and line dancing is a lot like building blocks. You learn a little bit something new each week.
Several line dancing instructors are now holding classes in Cape Breton communities, from Cape North to Glace Bay. Philippa Witch says one of her classes has grown to more than 30 students. And she says someone is heavily influencing the trend.
This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em, so lay your cards down, 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 down.
Beyonce just came out with a new country album a few weeks ago that is just tearing up the world, especially on TikTok.
As part of an online craze, people are recording their own dances to Texas Hold'em on TikTok. Among them is Brianna Dethridge of Sydney. She started taking Philippa Witch's classes a year ago.
Over the past month, her classes, Christine's classes, have grown like exponentially. Like there used to sometimes only be 6 of us here, and then in the past maybe like 4 or 5 weeks, it's a full room. So we're super happy about that.
Dethridge is also happy to see artists like Beyonce tipping their hat to country music.
I love it. I mean, so many different artists branch out to different genres. I think it's interesting. I really like it.
The resurgence of the dance has been a long time coming for Philippa Witch, who first started line dancing more than 30 years ago. She's since performed at weddings, festivals, and birthday parties.
When we moved to Cape Breton, I looked for some avenues to start doing that here. It's a great activity, but it also really helps me stay active and do something I really love.
Line dancers throughout Cape Breton say they're excited to see more people drawn to the activity because they say it's not only fun, it's a good way to spend time with friends. Erin Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
We have an update on the health of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. She has announced she has an undisclosed type of cancer. Catherine appeared in a video released today to talk about the diagnosis and her treatment. Our Anna Cunningham has more from London.
I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you personally.
This video statement that was released by Catherine, the Princess of Wales, will have come as quite the shock to the public here. There has been a lot of speculation, there has been concern about the princess's health, and there's also been a huge amount of misinformation being spread about on social media since she was last seen, which was on Christmas Day when she attended church with other members of the royal family in Sandringham. We knew that she had undergone abdominal surgery back in January, but Kensington Palace initially said that this was non-cancerous. Now we have been given more details directly from the princess herself. It was a very personal statement. She said that cancer cells had been found after the surgery. She also said that she was fit and well and that she's now undergoing a treatment of chemotherapy.
As you can imagine, this has taken time. It has taken me time to recover from major surgery in order to start my treatment. But most importantly, it has taken us time to explain everything to George, Charlotte and Louis in a way that's appropriate for them and to reassure them that I'm going to be okay.
We have had reaction from the monarch, King Charles, indeed her father-in-law, who himself is also undergoing treatment for cancer. In it, he said that he was so proud of Catherine and the courage that she had shown in speaking out as she did. At this point, this will put the lid really on the speculation and the wild misinformation that has been out there about the Princess of Wales. But also what was very interesting in this statement was that she reached out to other cancer patients, people who are also receiving diagnosis and having treatment themselves.
For everyone facing this disease, in whatever form, please do not lose faith or hope. You are not alone.
It was quite a poignant moment and quite something to hear from a member of the royal family. Anna Cunningham for CBC News, London.
In Moscow, at least 5 gunmen stormed a crowded theater. ISIS has claimed responsibility. Security officials count at least 40 people dead and 145 injured so far. And during the attack at Crocus City Hall, it either caught or was on fire, set on fire. Ithil Musa has more on what we're hearing and seeing, including unverified and a warning here, disturbing images of what's believed to be the deadliest terrorist attack on Russia in years.
Dressed in combat fatigues, at least 4 gunmen burst into a concert hall in Moscow, firing automatic weapons into crowds, calmly and methodically killing dozens of people. Russian media says the attackers set this massive fire, partially collapsing the roof. We heard gunshots. At first, we didn't understand what had happened, says this witness. Then I personally saw how the terrorists came in, started shooting everyone. In the end, they threw a Molotov cocktail. Everything was set on fire. About 100 people were rescued from the basement of the venue, taking shelter from what Russian officials call a bloody terrorist attack. ISIS has claimed responsibility, a claim bolstered by U.S. security officials.
The images are just horrible and just hard to watch, and our thoughts obviously are going to be with the victims of this terrible, terrible shooting attack.
The U.S. Embassy in Russia had warned that extremists were planning an attack in Moscow.
The Russians are enemy number 1 for ISIS. They have been attacking ISIS in Syria, as the Russians have supported Assad. The Russians have of late been increasing their influence in Africa to help those African countries in their fight with ISIS.
Vladimir Putin was briefed on the incident. Russia's president has just secured his 5th term. Amid Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine, Kyiv denied any involvement in the attack. Moscow has canceled all mass gatherings this weekend, and tonight stands a billboard in Russia's capital with the words, "We grieve." Ithil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
The death of Putin critic Alexei Navalny last month has added new urgency to the case of another person held in a Russian prison. Paul Whelan is a business executive holding U.S., Canadian, and British citizenship. He made a surprise call to the CBC's Briar Stewart in London. Here's that story.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for calling back. We got the chance to speak to Paul Whelan from the remote Russian penal colony where he's serving a 16-year sentence for espionage.
It's quite obvious now that Russia took me hostage.
We were preparing for another interview when Whelan suddenly called from prison. He was arrested during a visit to Moscow in 2018 and convicted during a secretive trial. The U.S. government considers him wrongfully detained. Do you feel more concerned for your safety now than before?
I do. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's high time my government's got me home.
He's worried because of what happened to opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died in a Russian prison last month. The Kremlin denies claims from Russian officials that it was responsible. But President Vladimir Putin did reveal this week that he had agreed to release Navalny in a prisoner swap, a deal which could have reportedly also freed Whelan, along with U.S. journalist Evan Gershkovich, in an exchange for Vadim Krasikov, a Russian national who's serving a life sentence for murder in Germany. How do you think Navalny's death affects the prospect of you being released in a prisoner swap?
It's a road bump. I think that the Russians didn't want to let Navalny go. They've been changing the goalposts since day one.
This news report that aired on Russian state media shows Whelan at the penal colony, where he works 6 days a week making clothing for state workers. Earlier this week, Canada's ambassador to Russia visited him at the penal colony, and officials say they're watching the case closely.
Anything that the Putin regime does that threatens a Canadian citizen is something of concern to us.
It's unfortunate what happened with Navalny, but it also shows that this is what Russia does.
And after 5 years, Whelan fears he could be running out of time. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Turning to the latest from the Israel-Hamas war, the U.S. is once again trying to dissuade Israel from a planned offensive in the city of Rafah in Gaza, where more than 1 million displaced Palestinians are sheltered. But Israel says it won't stop its fight against Hamas. As Chris Reyes reports, it comes as yet another UN ceasefire resolution was vetoed today.
Thank you. In Tel Aviv, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was met with cheers of support from locals calling for an immediate hostage deal. Blinken is back in Israel, meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other leaders. The visit is his sixth to the region since the October 7th Hamas attacks, underscoring American support for its ally. But as the war in Gaza closes in on 6 months, the conversations between the two are evolving.
We share the goal of ensuring Israel's long-term security. As we've said, though, a major military ground operation in Rafah is not the way to do it. It risks killing more civilians.
On that, Netanyahu said soon after that while Israel hopes for U.S. support, it's also willing to go at it alone. The Israeli Prime Minister said there was no way to defeat Hamas without entering Rafah. The exchange between the two leaders happened as the UN Security Council voted on a U.S. resolution that expressed its strongest support yet for a ceasefire.
This is a strong resolution, and it does more than just call for a ceasefire. It helps to make a ceasefire possible.
The resolution failed to pass, vetoed by Algeria and 2 permanent members of the Council, Russia and China.
The final text remains ambiguous and does not call for an immediate ceasefire, nor does it even provide an answer to the question of realizing a ceasefire in the short term.
Russia condemned the U.S. for failing to include in the text opposition to further Israeli military action in Gaza.
The U.S. draft contains an effective green light for Israel to mount a military operation in Rafah.
Russia and China simply did not want to vote for a resolution that was penned by the United States because it would rather see us fail than to see this council succeed.
On Saturday, the UN Security Council is expected to vote on another resolution with stronger calls for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Israeli defense minister is expected in Washington next week. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Coming up after the break, insurance premiums on your electric car could start to rise. How expensive parts and more EVs on the road could raise rates. That's next.
I'm the oldest Saskatchewan swimmer. So, I mean, there's nobody else in my age group at all throughout Saskatchewan. So, like when we had our recent swim meet, well, you know, it's almost as though I could say, it doesn't matter how long it takes me to swim, whatever distance I'm going to swim in a meet, I'm going to be the winner. The most I've ever swam in a competition is 400 meters. I'm trying to build up my endurance so I can go and touch the ball and turn around and come back again. But I like to continue because I feel the swimming is keeping me in good health because I've always been in good health. And I think that's what's helped me. In 1977, we started, yeah. And it was another gal and I that we were sitting on the bleachers, and we were watching. We had children or a child that swam with the children's club, which was called the Dolphins. And so as we sat there, she said to me, what are we sitting here for? We should be swimming ourselves.
8 times 225s or 250s.
She swims with this club. She's my oldest daughter.
But I've never thought about giving up because I want to keep at it like Mom is.
People are all ages, right from 18 upwards. And I mean, I'm 94 now and I'm still swimming. So, and this just flabbergasts people, you know.
Did you expect to still be swimming at 94?
No, I sure didn't. Never entered my head, I don't think. I mean, you've got to keep moving.
Well, if you drive an electric vehicle, a warning: insurance premiums for EVs could be going up in the next few years as the insurance industry grapples with a shift from gas-powered cars to electric alternatives and their costlier claims. Philippe de Montigny explains.
Benjamin Vassal and his partner never expected repairing their Tesla would take 2 months.
We hit a deer at around 90 kilometers per hour.
The bumper, trunk, and headlights had to be replaced.
And then we realized that the total cost was $18,000, which was really expensive compared to what we thought the car needed. So our insurance covered it.
Vassal, however, fears having to dish out more for insurance down the road.
And then you're thinking about the insurance policy and how it could go up because it's happening everywhere else.
A recent Morningstar DBRS report looked at the UK, where EV uptake is much higher than in Canada. The average cost of insurance there soared last year, up 72% for electric and only 29% for gas and diesel. The report says Canadians could see their premiums increase too.
Insurance is a pool business. The insurance premiums from a lot of people are used to pay claims for very few people. So right now in that pool, we have very few EVs.
But that'll change, he says, as EV production ramps up in Canada and sales of conventional cars and trucks are phased out by 2035.
Some electric vehicles just have higher repair costs, and that's a result of more expensive replacement parts that aren't as readily available, or also the skilled labor that it may take for these repairs.
Some colleges are hoping to change that, offering new EV mechanics programs. At George Brown College in Toronto, enrollment is strong, showing appetite for these skills.
It's just been over a year and a half now that we've been offering the program. It has almost 700 students.
Vassal worries costly and complicated repairs could turn people off from electric vehicles.
I'm not going to go electric because of insurance policies too expensive.
The couple first decided to get an electric car to save on gas, but with insurance costs being higher and charging costs going up, these savings are slowly melting away. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Welland, Ontario.
Darius Madavi is back with a look at our forecast. Darius?
Well, not too much excitement really across the province. Things are drying up as we get towards Sunday. Things are already dry for the northern half of the province. Not really seeing any precipitation there anytime soon. Maybe for the coast as we get into Monday and Tuesday. But generally speaking, that ridge of high pressure keeping them dry. Even the northern parts of the island over the next couple days, so they don't get the rain that we do tomorrow. They're a little bit mixed skies, but for the most part, it's really just a little bit of scattered precipitation throughout the south, maybe heavy in a couple places, but very short-lived all in all, so don't expect too much. If we zoom in on the south where the action is, again, you can see those showers coming to some areas, and then you can see it starting to spread up along the BC-Alberta border, especially here in the lower mainland. We should see some showers tomorrow, and then by Sunday, well, overnight Saturday into Sunday, we see a little bit of snow activity still in the southeast, but generally speaking, clearing up, calming down for Sunday, and then some more precipitation rolls in for the coast on Monday. So overall, not too much to talk about. In terms of temperatures, things are generally coming up in the north and then falling a little bit throughout the weekend in the south before coming up again for Monday. So if we roll through those temperatures over the next couple days, you'll notice those rising temperatures in the north, and then generally speaking, a little bit cooler tomorrow, especially on Saturday, coming up again on Sunday, and then for the southern interior, staying warm through Monday. On the coast, though, falling back down a little bit once again. So back down to 10 degrees for Vancouver, but it's still double digits, so can't complain. In terms of conditions across the province, nice and sunny throughout the north tomorrow. That sun doesn't come for us once again until Sunday, but then if we were to show this for Sunday, it would just be sunshine across the board. And if we zoom in to Vancouver, we do have a fairly consistent 5-day forecast with a nice break for the sunshine. But generally speaking, just like we've seen for the last few days where we've had some overcast skies and some showers, there's also been pretty light cloud and it's been high up. So there is still some light coming through. So not feeling quite as dreary as it might otherwise given this kind of forecast. So don't despair just yet. There will still be light skies, but we do have quite a bit of rain still to come.
Well, Darius, guess what time it is? Yes, you guessed it. It's Fun Fact Friday, and here again, of course, is our space and science specialist, right? You're everything specialist. I always learn so much from you, but today we're talking space.
Yes, science nerd is fine. Today we're talking about asteroid belts in particular, because I think we've all seen those sci-fi movies where the pilot of the spaceship is trying to navigate between all those asteroids, and it's a very tense scene. But in reality, if you take a look here, we can see what the asteroid belt looks like. It looks quite dense. It looks like there's a lot of activity coming in here between Mars and Jupiter. It seems like it would be hard to navigate. But we have to remember, this is a very big space, and asteroids are quite small. If you added up all the asteroids in the asteroid belt, it wouldn't even add up to 3% of the mass of our moon. So not actually that much stuff there in general, and it's pretty spread out. And actually, if you took any asteroid in the asteroid belt, on average, the next closest asteroid would be almost 1 million kilometers away. So that's 2.5 times as far as the distance between the Earth and the Moon. And the Earth and the Moon is a big distance. You can fit every planet in the solar system in there. So generally speaking, if you're piloting a spaceship through the asteroid belt, don't worry. It's harder to find an asteroid than to worry about getting hit by one.
I'm sure if you were quite close to an asteroid, though, that might be a little something different. Thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
One Richmond resident woke up to quite a surprise, a winning lottery ticket and a massive number in their bank account. We'll bring you that story after the break. A man from Richmond has claimed a $58 million lottery ticket.
Well, yeah, that's me every time too.
I'm just a regular guy. I might consider getting a fishing boat.
Yeah? Get some more?
Right.
Gold ones. No, I'm just kidding.
Chung now holds the largest lottery prize on a ticket purchased on playnow.com in BC. He also said he would like to travel and learn how to play guitar.
Could you imagine? $58 million?
Yeah. I'd still be here.
Of course, we love this place. Moving on to other things that I love. A well-known supernatural comedy franchise is back to haunt the big screen. The 5th movie bearing the Ghostbusters title is hitting theaters.
The first was in 1984, but CBC reviewer Jackson Weaver says not a lot has changed.
If there's something strange, if there's something weird, who are people gonna call?
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Into the 5th movie, we are at Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. They are back in New York. They're back fighting ghosts/ghost crime, and they're shooting lasers from speeding cars.
Phoebe Spangler, you stay inside this car.
I have a ghost to bust.
Just the way she said it, it sounded cool.
I can't hear you over the nuclear accelerator!
Now in that clip, you saw McKenna Grace shooting that laser out of the side of the car, speeding down the New York avenues, and alongside her, you saw her family. There's Carrie Coon playing her mother. There's Paul Rudd playing Gary, kind of a father figure in that. And then we also get Canadian Finn Wolfhard as the older brother, Trevor. But outside of that, we get all of the old faces, all of the people that we know and love. We get to see Dan Aykroyd as Ray Stantz. We get to see Bill Murray back as Peter Venkman. And of course, we get to see Ernie Hudson as Winston. And we even get a callback to the main antagonist from the first movie. And really, that's all Ghostbusters has going for it, unfortunately. Now, the initial movie was almost perfect by Canadian Ivan Reitman, the director. But when we're going back to that well, time and time and time again, really all that they can do when they're going back to mine that is to show us all of the theme park attractions that we loved the first time around. And it might get a little old, it might get a little tough to rewatch, but when it comes to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it's done as well as it can be done. But if you're going to watch it, try not to have too critical of a hat on, because this is a movie that's essentially for your kids. This is a movie to have fun. And when we go back to something that we have such a strong nostalgic feeling for, it can be tough for us to allow ourselves to enjoy something new. But you just got to give it a chance, because Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is not a masterpiece, but it's fun for your kids and probably for you while you're sitting next to them.
I can't wait to see it. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on our free app, CBC Gem, on YouTube, and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
We'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. Have a great weekend.